Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name's Gareth, this is Tech Check, and if you're looking to build an £800 computer today where you can actually go out to the market and purchase all of these parts from reputable manufacturers and from online stores, then stick around because we're going to be building this £800 computer step by step and showing you how to do it. So then guys, £800 seems like a lot of money. In 2021, we all know that that's not the case, with obviously demand being higher than ever and availability being absolutely shocking. But as I previously alluded to in the intro, this computer, you're actually able to go out today and purchase absolutely everything from either Amazon, Ebuyer, Scan, overclockers, wherever you may want to look. Okay, so it's not a terribly high-end computer, but it's a very capable computer. So whether you're looking to do some gaming or whether you're looking to do some light workload tasks, this will be absolutely perfect for an entry-level PC with the opportunity to upgrade further on the line. So let's go through the parts. Let's spend a few minutes just explaining the reasons why I've purchased them and where I actually purchased them from and how much we actually paid for them. Let's start with the process then, guys. So this is the i5 9400f. It's on the LGA 1151 socket. It's the 9th gen i5 as well. It's a 6-core processor. It's got a base frequency of 2.9 gigahertz and it's got a boost or a max boost of 4.1. So this kind of processor is somewhat comparable to like the 8500, something like that, but it's much cheaper. Okay, now it is obviously the F version, so there's no onboard graphics with this, so you will require an external graphics card as well. This was purchased from Ebuyer and it was £128. And in my eyes, for a 6-core CPU, absolute bargain here. So you do get a lot of value here for your actual money, okay? Moving on to the graphics card. So we all know, guys, this is an absolute bloody nightmare that everybody's going through at this moment in time. But what we've actually done here is we've reached out to the used market section and we've managed to pick up an Evga 1070 for £195. Now, in my eyes, given the light of obviously availability and all the issues around it, £195 for a 1070, especially a non-reference one, Evga, reputable brand, and you're going to get good performance from this. I think this will pair perfect with the i5 9400, and 1080p should be absolutely perfect. Mind you, what we also need to note here is the gentleman that's actually buying this computer has only actually got a 60 Hz monitor as well. So it is an IPS monitor, but it is 1080p and it is 60 Hz as well. So perfect for this and will be absolutely perfect for the next couple of years. It's primarily as well going to be used for light workload tasks. So that moves me nicely onto the case. So an old classic here. It's been out a number of years now, but there's a reason why it's fantastic. It's got amazing airflow. It's got really good space to work in. It comes with two 120 fans pre-inbuilt as well in the Phanteks case. And obviously this is a P400, okay? So it comes with a tempered glass side panel. It's got some really good functionality at the back for storage, so it can house your 3.5-inch drives as well as your 2.5-inch drives as well. And for me, it's got all the little niceties, pre-installed standoffs. It comes with USB 2. It's got everything that you would require from a standardized ATX case, okay? So, my eyes, £65 for this case. Can't see anything better, okay? Yes, we could have saved another £25–30 on this particular case, and we could have actually got something more budget orientated, but I wanted something that had a little bit of style, that would last quite a long time, and had potentially the opportunity, if the gentleman wants to increase some RGB, or he wants to obviously add a little bit more of an upgrade to certain components, this particular case would house them really nicely. On to, let's say, the RAM. So we have actually gone for 16 gigabytes of Corsair LPX. This is 3200 megahertz. So again, likewise, in this particular system, we could have stuck with 2666. We could have even gone to 3000 megahertz as well. I do believe in 2021 you shouldn't be getting any less than 16 gig. Personally, it's would be the bare minimum that I would go, okay? But yes, we did get 3200, primarily because it was around £10 more expensive for 32 than it was for 3000. But as you can see there, absolutely fantastic. Corsair is a very reputable brand, and in my eyes, that £10 is very much worth it if in a year's time you wanted to either improve the GPU or CPU itself. Onto storage, guys. For mass storage, we've actually got a Seagate Barracuda 2 terabyte. This is primarily going to be there for, obviously, his mass storage drive. If he wants to save any photos, or he wants to save any large workloads or anything like that, this will do absolutely perfect. And what we've also gone for is his operating system is going to be installed on a Barracuda 500 gig 510. Now, this is an Nvme drive. It's a PCIe Gen 3 drive as well, so he's going to massively benefit in comparable to this. The only difference being the capacity is much less on this one here. So if you're looking for a slight upgrade, guys, then getting an Nvme drive and putting your operating system on it will massively improve the performance of everything that you're currently doing on your computer, how snappy it feels. And not only that, if you do want to install any games, you've got a little bit more capacity on a 500 gig than you will either a 128 or a 250. So motherboard in question, guys, is this Z390 Gaming Edge AC from MSI. I featured this particular motherboard on our previous build. Absolutely fantastic value for money, guys, and seeing as that this was on offer still from Scan for £119, I think it was, for a Z390, that's absolutely fantastic value. So this particular motherboard supports 8th gen and 9th gen CPUs, and again, it will give fantastic power delivery. It will give the gentleman the opportunity to upgrade if he ever wants to either, I don't know, to a 9900K, if he ever feels like he needs that additional upgrade at all. For £119, it's absolutely fantastic. So again, we could have saved quite a lot of money here. We could have gone with a totally different platform, and we could have potentially saved, what, £40 to £50 on this particular motherboard. So if you are looking for that £500 mark, something that you're obviously going to be spending on an Xbox One X or a PS5, there is some room for manoeuvre here and potential to save quite a bit of money. So if you wanted to save £40 or £50 on the motherboard, you wouldn't necessarily need to spend £60 on an Nvme drive. So there's £100. I wouldn't change the CPU. I wouldn't change the GPU, but you have got the potential of saving £20 or £30 there. So that's 140. You wouldn't necessarily need to go with an all-in-one cooler either. So you could stick with a basic fan cooler or air cooler, and you could save probably £30 or £40 here. And again, for the power supply, which I'll talk about in a second, you've got the potential of saving £30 or £40 there and going with a non-modular 500 watt or 450 watt power supply. So you have got the opportunity for somewhere around £550 to £600 this particular build if you were to downgrade the parts. Okay, moving on to the power supply, guys, you'll notice that we have got a running theme similar to the RAM. Corsair, absolutely fantastic. I've always had Seasonic and Corsair power supplies. I've had a couple of EVGA ones as well. but I tend to stick with what I know, and never had one fail on me yet, and I've probably had over 30 or 40 of them, and I just think that you get what you pay for. So this time round we have gone for an RM650. It's an 80 plus gold certified modular power supply, and I can't recommend these enough. Okay, now yes, we could have saved 30 or 40 pounds on this particular power supply and gone with a cheaper 80 80 bronze certified power supply and have it non-modular as well. So the reason why I've gone for this one is because if the customer wants to actually upgrade to something like a 2060 or a 2070 in the next few years, then this power supply is going to obviously cater for those needs, no problem whatsoever. Always, always, always think about, if you're going to have to upgrade one component, what other components are you going to have to upgrade in your case to actually make that one upgrade. So don't cheap out on your power supply, guys. Go for a reputable brand. Go for one that can obviously come with a long-standing guarantee or something like that, and it will serve you well. On to the all-in-one cooler, guys. So this is the GAMNING L240, okay? Liquid cooler all-in-one. So this is the V2 version as well. So really, really, really good all-in-one 240mm cooler, guys. Now, yes, we could have saved quite a bit of money by just running an air cooler on the motherboard and CPU, okay? And you could probably get round with somewhere around £30, something like that would be absolutely fine, okay? But I decided that we were going to spend, I think this was £65, okay? So it was double what we had to spend. But the reason why I did is due to the fact that I know for a fact this particular customer will upgrade certain components such as the graphics card and the CPU in the next year or so, okay? And for me, if you actually spend the money now, you don't have to in another year's time. So he had the additional money, he wanted to get a better power supply, he wanted to get a better cooler, and he also wanted a better motherboard, okay? So these three components here will allow him to upgrade his CPU and his GPU and not have to worry about anything coming up in the future, okay? So now we've got rid of parts and you know how much we've paid for them and where we've actually got them. I'll also leave them in the description as well. So if you guys want to purchase anything that you can see in front of you today or that we're going to use in this particular build, I'll leave a link in the description so you can obviously click on that. There will be affiliate links, guys. It doesn't cost you anything more, but it allows me to benefit by a little small kickback from the actual vendor themselves. So without further ado, let's crack on and we'll walk you through a step-by-step guide of how we build this £800 computer. So first step first, guys, we need to prepare the motherboard and make sure that everything that we can do outside the case we do, because it gives you a lot more room, gives you a lot more light, and it just makes the whole process for the builder a lot smoother, okay? So we'll start off with the motherboard, and more importantly, guys, don't forget the I/O shield, because we will need that. So the motherboard box, guys, you can use as a perfect platform to actually build everything, okay? That way, you're not getting your fingers all over the back here, and it also means that you're not scratching up any table or potentially going to damage anything on the back of the board. So this board, guys, it's got an 8-pin connector and a 4-pin connector, so it's got fantastic power delivery. It does actually come with 2 M.2 slots as well, and it's got 2 × 16 slots for PCIe as well. So if you did want to do SLI, which I wouldn't recommend it, it does obviously support that as well. It comes with 4 DIMM slots for your memory. So you've got a lot of potential for upgrades with this particular motherboard. Now, with that being said, it does only support 8th gen and 9th gen Intel CPUs as well. So seeing as we're obviously going to be using an i5 9400, the potential upgrades from there are obviously an i7 and an i9. So whilst there is upgradability, I would potentially, if you are going to be doing anything, it would be from this to something like a 9700 or a 9900K. All right, so just bear that in mind, that Intel have got this funny way of every time they bring out a new CPU, they bring out another motherboard, which means that the old ones aren't compatible. Unlike AMD, where AM4 has been around for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's given, should we say, us consumers, if you like, a fantastic opportunity to upgrade their CPU but not have to replace their motherboard. So, enough speaking. What do we have to do? Okay, so on this particular motherboard here, okay, you have got the CPU socket, and what we're needing to do is, in order to obviously gain access to this, you're going to have to press down on this little bracket here, pull it out to the left, and then just pull it up. Okay, and what you'll find is there is the socket that opens. Okay, now bear in mind, you don't need any unnecessary force. You just need to put it in and do it carefully, because if you don't, and you don't match up the little triangle, which I'll show you in a second, there is a good chance that you are going to either bend the pins or potentially knacker the whole thing. So guys, there she is. There's the 9400F. So please be aware that on this particular CPU, there is a triangle down at this bottom corner down here. We need to line this triangle with the triangle that is on the motherboard or the CPU socket down here, okay? And all we need to do is we need to match that triangle with this triangle down here, place the CPU into the socket, and that's it, okay? You push down the retention bracket, make sure it's under the little knob there, and then what you will see is this little bracket here has just come out. Do not throw this away. A lot of people make the mistake of, oh, that's rubbish, it's no good. If you ever come to sell the motherboard, a lot of people will ask for this because it actually saves and protects the motherboard pins on the CPU socket. So we have got 2 DIMMs here, and we need to populate 2 of these RAM slots. The mistake that a lot of people do is they put them side by side. First things first, guys, okay? Always consult your motherboard manual to see which 2 RAM slots need to be occupied, okay? Because if you've got two DIMMs of RAM and you put them side by side, you'll be running them in single channel, and you will be basically wondering, why is my computer lagging, or why is it not as quick as what it should be? Okay, so number 1, there is a little grid on this particular motherboard telling you which ones that you need to use. Okay, and on this one, if we're running, well, 2 sticks of RAM, we need to be using as far to this side, the first slot, miss a slot, and then the 3rd slot. Okay, so it tells me that here, DIMM B and DIMM A2 and B2. Okay, so make sure that you are particularly using the right slots, because if not, this will not be running as fast as what you need. So when we're installing any DIMMs or RAM slots into DIMMs, guys, just be mindful that on this particular PCB, there is a slot further to this side than there is that side, okay? And the aim of the game is to line that little gap there with the particular gap on the RAM slot here, okay? Or the DIMM slot, okay? So, easiest way of doing it is to make sure that we've opened our tabs on our motherboard, on our DIMM slots, okay? Or else they won't go in. Consult where we're going to be placing them, and on this one, it's on DIMM slot 2 and DIMM slot 4, okay? So line this up, and then all we have to do is, with even pressure, press down on both sides until you hear that click. There we go. Press down. All done. So, next thing is going to be our Nvme Drive, okay? So we're going to connect this on the top possible M.2 slot, okay? This will communicate with the CPU a lot quicker because there's more PCIe lanes, and it will mean that we're going to be placing our operating system on this. Okay, this is what's going to make sure that we have a quick and snappy feeling to everything that's going on when we're on screen. So just remember, keep your fingers off of the PCB, which is this end here. As you can see, like our RAM slots, it's got a little groove into it as well. And what we're going to be doing, guys, is we're going to be placing it in this top slot up here. So if I place that down and I show you this slot just up here. Now, as you can see, we have a pre-installed standoff, which is here, okay? We need to be making sure that when we put this drive into here, like if I just show you now, like that, and this screw is here, it needs to be over here, okay? Because when we press this down, it needs to be able to screw into this, okay? So one thing that I forgot to do, and I do it every single time, is inside your motherboard tray or motherboard box, there will be a little tiny screw or a couple of tiny screws that you're going to require in order to secure this Nvme drive down into this standoff. So if you forget like me, grab it out now and I'll meet you in a second. So there we go, guys. That's our 2 screws in this little bag here that I forgot to take out the motherboard box. So you will require these, but before we do that, let's take this Nvme drive out. And what we need to do, guys, in fact, we don't need that. With our fingers or thumbs, we can unscrew this little screw here, okay? And we can place it in the next screw across, and that will allow now, if we want to install our Nvme drive, make sure you put it in a slight angle, like that. And then when we press it down, it will fit perfect onto the retention screw there, or standoff, shall I say. And these things are tiny, absolutely tiny. So if you're anything like me, you have fat fingers, then I would suggest a magnetic screwdriver works absolutely perfect. There we go. Perfect. So that's it, guys, in terms of the motherboard. If you've followed along so far, you should have your CPU fully seated in its socket, and that should be fine. You should have your RAM sticks in the correct DIMM slots, which are up here, and you should have your Nvme drive, which is on the top slot of the motherboard. So if you've followed along and everything looks like this, you're doing great. The next step will be to dismantle the case and make sure that we can gain access to it. We'll have a look at the cables that are required to connect to the motherboard, and I think we'll get the fans in there, and then we'll install the motherboard. So, thank you very much for following along, guys. If you are getting any value out of the video, do think about subscribing to the channel, because it really, really does help me out. What we're going to do, guys, is we're going to take this particular case to pieces as much as what we need to in order to make sure that we can build in it. And the easiest way by doing is getting rid of the side panels and making sure that we've got access to all of what we need to, okay? So, easy done. All we need to do is take off the 4 side panel screws on this case. Right, now that those 4 screws are off, guys, it should be as simple as just holding the bottom and pulling it out slightly, just like that, making sure that you keep a grip of this, because remember, it is glass and the worst thing in the world is to drop it. So keep hold of this, put it somewhere safe and get it out of the way where you're not going to knock it over. Right, at the top, we've got a dust filter as well, which is magnetic, which is absolutely fine. No problems, it's not going to cause as many obstructions, but if we get that out of the way as well. On the front of the case, guys, this is where a lot of people worry. Don't worry, it's going to need a little bit of force. Now, I have noticed with this particular case, it's not as bad as some NZXT cases where you've got to really yank it to get it off, because there's a really nice mechanism here. So, put your hand at the bottom and slightly pull, and it should just come off just like this. And then for the other side panel, guys, what we need to do is just turn these 2 screws, one at the top and one at the bottom. These won't actually fall out, so don't worry about that. And then literally pull it on the back and pull to the side, and then the back one comes off as well. Right, there we go guys. It's quite a light case as well, this is. I think because the last few builds that we've been doing, we've been using fully glass cases such as the Dynamic and then the Corsair Obsidian. This one feels like a breeze. I can move this one quite easy. So just to give you a quick look then guys, so what we've got, if we pull these cables out, what connectivity have we got? HD audio, which is here. We've got a USB 2, which is there. We've got our standard front panel connectors, which consist of a reset switch, a power switch and power LED lights. And what's that one? Yeah, power switch and a hard drive light, which is fine. We've got a SATA power cable here, and we've got a couple of fan connections here as well, which is daisy chained together. So that will, I'm guessing, allow us to use, obviously, or power the fans that we've got already installed into the case. So as we said previously, it does come with a rear 120mm Phanteks, I think it's an SK120, and then in the front of the case it also comes with one pre-installed as well. As we said previously guys, the availability to store our 3.5-inch drives and 2.5-inch drives are easily accessible into these drive cases here. Literally just a pinch mechanism to open them and close them. So you can do that very, very easily. So he says, there we go. And inside the case comes, on the bottom drive cage, comes all of our screws that we're going to require to install everything into this particular case. So if you're at this stage where I am guys, you've removed the top, the sides, the front panels, and you've got it down to the bare bones, you're now about ready to make sure we can get the motherboard into the case and we can get the fans installed into the case. So what we're going to do guys first is we're going to install our 2 front intake fans. Okay, so very, very straightforward. We want to make, the only thing that we have to make sure is that we orientate them the correct way as an intake fan rather than an exhaust fan. And in this particular scenario, we can use the one that's already installed as a reference to make sure that the next 2 that we install are going to be the exact same really. So first things first guys, what we want to make sure is that we have our cable on the left hand side, because what we don't want to be doing is putting it this side, putting our cable in, and then we've got a cable here that we've got to start rerouting all the way around into the case. Number one, they're not massively long, it's about 40 centimeters, okay? So just be aware, it's much, much easier if you are to put it up here like this, and there you can basically feed it straight through and you don't have to worry about it, okay? So very, very basic, 4 screws that it comes with, like this, 1 in each 4 sides, and then it's as simple as that. And last one, make sure you've got multiple screwdrivers, just because first time you install any of these fans, they're pretty difficult to screw in, especially with a tiny screwdriver like this. So make sure you've got one that's a little bit more durable and larger, so you can obviously apply a little more pressure. There we go. Right, so we've got our top one and we've got our middle one. Middle one was already installed, and then our top one's installed as well. So we're going to repeat that guys for the bottom one down here. So there we go guys. If you have a look now, we have 1, 2, 3 fans fully installed. We have the cables exiting on this side. One thing that I just want to point out guys is on installation of this bottom fan here, you may encounter an issue with regards to this particular bracket here. Now, it is stopping you from just basically installing it into the case. Make sure that if you're wanting to get this third one down here, there is 4 little screws, 2 at the back here and 2 at the front here, which you need to uninstall and take out, and then the fan can just slip in. okay? But quite happy with that. We can move on to the next stage, which is installation of our motherboard. So we'll get that done now. So guys, before we install the motherboard, we must ensure that we put in the I/O shield at the back of the case just here. Obviously some motherboards, depending on which ones they are, come with a pre-built I/O shield on the motherboard already, and you don't need to worry about this step. The worst thing in the world is installing the 8 screws that's required to keep the motherboard in place and then realise that you forgot the I/O shield and it looks an eyesore at the back, okay? So search in your motherboard box, you'll find the I/O shield. Make sure this is installed into the back of the case first. It's fairly straightforward. Open it up, and then all we need to do, guys, is orientate it the correct way, put it inside the case. Let me turn it around so you can see. I can't see what I'm doing, but should still be able to do it. Make sure it's at the back here, it's all lined up, and then if you press, there we go, that's one. There we go. Fully in the back. So when we enter the motherboard into the case, they will slot through on these open grooves here, and then everything should fit in perfectly. You don't have to worry about taking it out. So guys, what we're going to do now is we're going to put the motherboard into the case. Majority of cases now come with pre-installed standoffs. If your case doesn't have them, make sure that you install these before trying to put the motherboard into the actual case itself. All motherboards should have a center pin which holds the motherboard in place while you actually do this, and allows you to line the motherboard up, okay? So I would advise, if there's standoffs like this case already has them, then obviously all you need is the screws, and make sure that they're correct ones, and I'll show you that in a second. If not, then make sure that you're putting the standoffs in now, okay? The second thing to take note of here is you need to have a look at what the retention bracket's going to be like for your CPU cooler, okay? So this particular case has got a huge cutout at the back, so we won't have any issues or any problems. But if yours doesn't, and it's particularly small, you can't get access to the back of the motherboard, then you'll need to obviously install that retention bracket before you place your motherboard into the case as well. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to place the motherboard onto the pre-installed standoffs, and we do that by putting the motherboard into the case, and we're wanting to line up these particular USB ports on the motherboard with the I/O shield at the back of the case, okay? And what we should do is we should be able to see, there we go. Now it's fully seated into the case, it can't move around, and we can put the screws in, okay? So we need to make sure that we are using the correct screws, okay? And what I mean by correct screws are, I'll just give you 2 examples. We've got 2 different screws here. This particular screw here is for the power supply, or the PSU. This particular screw is for securing the motherboard down, okay? And if I give you a look sideways on, you will see, if I had it in shot, there we go, sideways on, you will see that this one's got quite a large head and this one's got a flat head, or a much thinner head on it, okay? Make sure that you are using this one, not this one, okay? So we'll get these ones installed. You should have 8 or 9 that you need to install, depending on whether you've got pre-installed standoffs and a center pin as well. What I would advise, guys, is you do the ones which are most difficult to get to as well first, okay? So you'll have one down here, you'll have one just here, one here, one here, one here, here, and here. And then you've got the center pin, which is right smack bang in the middle, okay? So if we get this one out the way up here, it'll be much easier for us to go ahead. And what I would advise, guys, is this does not need to be mega tight either, okay? I think we've still got one left. Right then, guys, so if you followed along, you should have your motherboard, your CPU, your NVMe, your RAM, all installed into your case. We've also installed the 2 additional fans as well, what we're going to move on to now is our all-in-one 240mm cooler for our CPU. So we spoke about obviously the GAMNING 240 L240 V2. So we're going to get this out, we're going to prepare this, and then we're going to install it into the top of this case as an exhaust as well. Okay, so let's get it unboxed and I'll see you in a minute. So guys, in the box you will see we've got two 120mm RGB fans. These come with RGB splitter cable here and a PWM 4-pin header as well, or fan connector as well. So obviously that's the same for both of these, and then we've also got the 240mm all-in-one cooler, which we can take this off. We don't need those. Really nice cooler. You can see obviously the pump's got deep cool on it, and on the back it's got some nice little tape to remind you, please take me off before you install me. So again, this has got a power cable on here which will need to go onto the CPU fan header on the motherboard, which we'll show afterwards, and then this is obviously for the RGB to give you those nice little colours that you're going to be able to control as well. So we'll put this to one side for a second. Quite a lot of stuff here, guys, so just be aware that obviously we need to make sure that we're applying the right retention bracket and it's being applied correctly as well. So guys, we've got everything out of the box and we've took all the shall we say screws and nuts and everything else out, and we've laid them all out. Okay, so I've took all the packaging off, so just so that you've got a bit of more visibility to what we've actually got here. And like I said, Corsair are absolutely amazing. Even though they've got quite a lot of cables, their all-in-one coolers work, and they work really, really well. So with the deep cool one, I've only had one experience with it in the past, but you can see there's a lot of cables, and it does look a little bit concerning that for a newbie or for a new time PC builder, should we say, you can look and go, oh my god, how am I going to do this? But I think the easiest way is get everything out on the table, make sure you know what you need. You've got the instruction manual that comes with obviously the product itself, and there's nothing wrong with obviously looking at that particular manual and taking it step by step, okay? But for this particular one, because we're using an Intel CPU, we need to use obviously the Intel CPU retention bracket here, not socket, bracket, okay? So it does say on the back here, it says AMD or Intel. So we just need to make sure we've orientated this the correct way, okay? So we're using Intel, okay? So we want to be using Intel, and it's this way, okay? So when we're putting the screws through, we want to be making sure they come in through this way so you can see the Intel bracket. So then guys, what we're going to do is we're going to get the screws and we're going to put them through one that, if I show you here, the inner screws are what we're looking to use at this moment in time, okay? So they want going through just like that there, okay? Just like that. I can't make it any closer. So what we're going to do is we're going to put through one screw, and you'll notice that they won't sit flush unless you turn them until they actually sit through. You want to get one of these black clips, and if you just put the black clip and you slot it on, and you can clip it straight on. And we want that, the same as that, for all four corners of this bracket, okay? There we go. So you should have something, guys, that looks just like that, okay? And what we're going to do, guys, is because we've got this nice big open cutout here on the back of the motherboard tray and case, what we can actually do is we can slot this through here, just like that, okay? Now, what you have to be careful is when you're mounting the cooler to this mechanism is you tend to have this happen. If I can, there we go. There we go. It wants to do this, push all the way out, okay? So easy fix to that is just by making sure you hold one side while you're putting it on and get one screw on, and then once you've got one screw on, you do the diagonal and you should be absolutely fine, okay? So that's step one. We've got our retention bracket in place, and remember, if you don't have a large cutout, you need to do that before that you place your motherboard into the case, all right? Next step will be, there you go, look, it's wanting to fall out now. I'll tell you what, we'll put it there until we're actually needing it, okay? Next step will be to install the case, or should we say the cooler fans, onto the cooler itself. Now, as you can see, there's quite a lot of cables that are coming off of these particular fans, okay? You've got a splitter cable here, and you've also got an RGB cable here, okay? We're not going to worry about them for the time being. What we're going to do is make sure that we put our fans onto our radiator correctly, and then we'll worry about the cables afterwards, okay? So, first things first, we need to remember, as we're going to have this at the top of the case, we're wanting to use this as an exhaust fan, okay? So, we need to orientate it the way that I've got it, well, facing you now, okay? So, the air is pushing towards you and going out of the case, all right? So one thing I would say is make sure that you've got your cables at the back like this, because if not, it's going to be an absolute pain to get them orientated through the back of the case and out of sight so nobody can see them. Next step, guys, will be to use these long screws here to fix the actual fan to the radiator, okay? Don't over tighten these, you don't need to. There's a chance that if you do over tighten them, you might penetrate the radiator and do some damage. So first things first, get them in, get them all lined up, and then you'll just feel it as they bite. So basically, now that we've got our fans installed onto our cooler, just as like this, we've got our cables coming out of this side, so that way when we've placed it into the case like this, we know that we can hide these cables and get them out of the way, okay? So I think the first things first, what we're going to do is we're just going to check for clearance inside the case to make sure that everything fits, okay? Ooh, is that going to fit? There is a chance that might not fit. I don't think it will. Ooh, problem. We may have to do a bit of a mess around here because this will not fit. Total change of plan, guys. We have encountered a big issue. Number one, because the height of this particular case from the top of the motherboard to the roof of the case, because of the heatsink on the motherboard, I don't have sufficient room to actually mount this particular all-in-one at the top. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove two of these fans at the front, and we're going to have those at the top as exhaust, and we're going to have to use the 240 all-in-one at the front. It's not a massive issue. It's a pain in the arse because obviously we've already installed these, but taking two fans out, putting them at the top of the case is not the biggest problem that we're going to encounter. So let me do that quickly and I'll be back with you in a minute. So we are back, guys, and just to keep you informed with regards to what we've actually done, because I experienced a bit of a shall we say a novice error, okay? I didn't actually order these parts, the customer did. I did ask to make sure that he'd done his due diligence and checked that everything would fit. Now, the issue that I was facing was, let me just put this in here, right, okay. So first thing to note is what we've actually done. We've removed the three fans at the front of the case, okay, and we've replaced it with the AIO, okay. Now, the reason for that, and before I show you, we have placed two of the 120s back as exhaust at the top, okay? Now, the problems that we were having, if I turn this round, okay, and just point this up here. So the problem we were having was the heat shield on the motherboard, okay, wasn't allowing, as well as the RAM, to allow for the fan and the radiator to sit up top. Absolutely impossible. I thought about removing the actual motherboard. I thought about removing the RAM and then trying to get it in afterwards. Not going to happen, okay? So if you are going to use this particular case and you are using an AIO, make sure that it's going to fit before you install all of the fans and then realise it doesn't fit. So what we've done is we have put the AIO as an intake on the front. We've made sure that obviously the tubes are at the bottom, just so that we can obviously give the pump as much prolonged life as possible. And I've checked that the tube length is sufficient to actually attach to the CPU. That's the next thing, because on a lot of 240mm AIOs, the casing or the tubing isn't long enough to allow you to do what I've done here. But given everything and taking everything into consideration, I don't think it's that bad now, to be honest, because you're going to have some RGB at the front of the case, and given the fact that the Phanteks front cover is see-through, it's going to look quite nice. So aesthetics are going to be improved a little. And second of all, we've not lost out because we've still got two 120mm at the top as exhaust. So any hot heat that this 9400F generates, yes, it's going to be introduced into the case, and the GPU may suffer due to obviously no fresh air coming in. It's going to be warmer air. But what we are going to be able to do is we're going to be able to extract that air quite efficiently through the three 120mm, two at the top, one at the rear. Okay, so what other thing that I could have done to counteract it is have three fresh air 120 fans coming in, and we could have just put something like an Arctic cooler or an Noctua cooler onto obviously the CPU. Now, I did ring the customer and advise him of the issues that we were facing, and he advised that he wanted to keep the 240 AIO, and basically he said to put it in front of the case. So I've said no problem, I can do it. It's just that obviously we're going to have one fan that we're not going to be able to utilise. Now, it can't fit at the top because the case doesn't support three 120s at the top. What we're going to do now is we're going to attach the retention bracket for the pump for the CPU cooler, and then we're going to attach the CPU cooler to the CPU, and I'll show you how to do that now. And quite simply, guys, all we're going to be doing is we need a P-size amount on this particular CPU, okay? We don't need huge amounts, all right? That is absolutely ample just there. Then, next step will be, like it says here, remove before installation. So that's exactly what we're going to do, is we're going to remove that, and that will actually give us a nice clean surface to be able to attach our CPU pump to our CPU, okay? So, we want to make sure it's orientated the correct way. We're going to place this over the top of these 4 screws here. There we go. And then we're going to use these particular screws just here to attach them. I would say start off on one corner, get it just so it's not going to come off. There we go, and then we move on to the next. Cool. So, there we go. We have our 240 all-in-one cooler fully installed with the retention bracket for Intel, and we're all good to go. What I would suggest at this point, guys, is if you do have any of these little plastic bits on your motherboard, feel free to actually pull them off just in case that you forget. Oh, nice. And then there's one just here on this particular bit as well. I can't get it. Still can't get it. Come here. There we go. Right, looking nice. Right, so Next step is wiring this all-in-one cooler up so that you guys can see how it's wired and what goes where. Okay, so first things first, I would always advise you to look at the instruction manual. But first things first. So we have two different connections off of this. One is for the RGB and one is to power the actual CPU pump. Okay, so this one here is for the pump. It's only got 3 pins, but the CPU fan header, which is just here, which you can't see, which is right, okay, well, it's just here. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to line up these with the holes on the pin there, just there. There we go. Right, that's that lined up. And then this one is going to be pushed round the back and we're going to connect it to the fans and the pump. Okay? So there you go, guys. That's what it currently looks like at this moment in time. What we're going to do now is we are going to install the power supply, get all of the cables because it's a modular power supply. We're going to get those out. We're going to get those installed and then we can sort out the cable management after the fact. All we've got then is our GPU and we need to install our 3.5-inch hard drive and then we're done. So stick with me, I'll be back in a sec. I love the smell of that. Oh. So guys, onto the PSU. So absolutely beautiful looking little power supply. It's very compact, this RM650. I would say it's something along the lines of, I don't know, 20 centimeters, something like that, just under 20 centimeters. So really nice looking power supply, and obviously it's got low power mode as well. So if it's not under load, the fan will stop spinning, so it'll be silent. But all in black, really nice in keeping with regards to everything else that we've got in here. And as I said before, it's fully modular. So any cables that you don't need is not going to be cluttering up the back of your case. So just to go through what we do need then, guys. So first of all, we need a 24 pin. Okay, so just make sure that when you obviously plugging these in, you are plugging the right end into the PSU. Okay, majority of them, let's have a look. Yeah, this one says PSU on it. Okay, so this side here needs to go into the PSU. And what we also need to be making sure, guys, is that we are using the correct plugs on the back here. Okay, so where this one says 24 pin, you plug straight into there, and then the second cable can go into the plug right next to it. And then this one plugs into your 24 pin, which I'll show you after. Okay, so the one after that, which is the next easiest one, is obviously our CPU power cable. Okay, now again, it says, I don't know whether you can see that, but it says CPU on this side. So again, guys, all we've got to do is orientate it the correct way and then plug that in, and that can go to our CPU. Now because our motherboard's got an 8-pin and a 4-pin, what I've actually got is I've got 2. Okay, so what you can actually do with these is basically just unclip these 2 here, if I can do it. You can never get them to stay together, but as soon as you don't want it, there we go. So there we go. So we just need one of these guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug in this side again onto here, just like that. And then we're going to plug this one into our motherboard here, as well as only one of these 4 pins, because we've got a 2-pin connection, okay, an 8-pin and a 4-pin, okay, so we're going to use both of these cables. So that's those 2. We've then got our PCIe graphics card cable, okay. Now again, we're using a 1070 and it takes an 8-pin, so we're just going to use this particular 8-pin here. And obviously, again, all we need to do is take this end where it says peripheral or SATA drive, okay, and we're just going to plug it straight into there, okay, there we go. And then our last one to plug in is for our hard drive, and this is a 6-pin connector. And again, we're just going to plug it straight into here. And there we go. And they're the only cables, guys, that we're going to need. All right, so I'm going to put this into the back, and the way that we're going to do it is we need to be making sure that the fan is not being starved for air. Okay, so if you look in this particular case, there we go, right, in this particular case you will see that it's actually got a mesh cutout here and I can't remember what, it's got a dust filter to obviously allow for the fan to breathe. Okay, so we need to make sure that that's orientated with the fan down, not fan up. Now in this one it's not going to make a world of difference because it has got a cutout in the top of the case as well, but it wants to be fan down. Okay, and with the PSU came 4 screws, and all we're going to do is we're going to screw that in at the back here, and I'll show you that now. So get the PSU, place it inside, just like that. Make sure it lines up. There we go. And then what we can do is we can screw these 4 screws in, and we can hold it in position. Three, and the last one, number 4. So guys, now we've got our PSU installed, what we can start to do is think about what we're going to do with all of these cables. Okay, so we start off with the easiest one first, guys. Okay, and that is always the largest one. What we're going to do is we're going to put these through these rubber grommets for routing it to make it, number 1, look nicer, and number 2, so we don't have so much clutter showing. Okay, so we are going to need to use this top grommet up here. So if we push that through there, we can pull these cables out the way so we're not going to get them all caught. We now know that that's where our 24 pins going. Okay, we can also think about where our CPU ones are going as well. Okay, so we know that these 2 are CPU ones, and we know that they've got to go up here. Okay, so I think the smartest thing, are they going to be long enough to go like that? Don't think so. Ooh, babes. They may have to go a different way. Yeah, I think they're going to go like that up there. So let's get those ones through. Right, so let's start with the biggest one first. There we go, that's one of them. And then the smaller one afterwards. There we go, right. They can stay there. We don't want those overlapping those either, so that's that and that's that. Right, the next one is our graphics card, and what we want to do is make sure that that's routing through the bottom one, just here. Which is fine. And then our last one doesn't need to go anywhere, that's for our hard drive, and we need to install that, and that's what we're going to do next. So guys, here we go. So we put a 24-pin cable through. We've also pulled our PCIe cable through for our graphics card, and our 2 CPU cables are through right at the top up here as well. So we don't need to pull the SATA power cable through because that's at the back for the hard drive. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull through or show you what I've done in terms of obviously the other cables. So we need to pull, in fact I might as well show you this way. So I've pulled through our USB 2 cable, which is here. I've pulled through our HD audio cable, which is at the bottom down here. And I've also pulled through all our front panel connections, which are here. And on the back, you'll see, to be fair, it's pretty straightforward with the cable management on here. We've only got five fans, so there's next to no cables. Having a modular power supply really helps as well, and it just means that it's going to be ultra clean, to be fair. Now, don't worry about the rest of the cables here. They're obviously for the fans, and we'll hook those up afterwards. Especially with this case as well, you've got a SATA power connection and a little splitter cable. Where is it? There it is. A splitter cable for 3 fans as well. So we're going to utilise that along with that SATA power connection there, and that will allow us to obviously power the top 2 fans and the rear exhaust fan as well. And then, as we said previously, we've got our connection here for our hard drive, and also we're going to use a secondary connection here off of the same cable to obviously power that SATA power connection there. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it around and we're going to do all of the connections on the front of the motherboard so that you guys know exactly what's what. Right then guys, so what we're going to do is we're going to first of all install our 24-pin power supply cable, which is this one here. We just need to make sure that we've got the clip which is on this side, so when we turn it around and we put it this way, it will easily go in, and what we're looking for is it to click in. There we go. Right, next one is our USB 2 connection, which is here. And what we need to do, we need to do the same thing with that one. We just need to bend it around. Oh, he says. There we go. Bend it around and plug it in into here. Next is our HD audio. And as you'll see, there is a blank which is just there. Okay. And what we want to do is match that up with the blank which is just up there. So if we hold it up like this, we know that it's going to be wrong. So what we need to do is we need to just put it the other way around, and then we can pop it in. There we go. And then last but not least, and this is the ones where I think most people get confused with. So we are going to actually connect our power switch, our reset switch, our power LED lights, and then our HDD light. Okay, so if you can see, we need to contact or make connections with these down here. Okay, now there's a little graph here which shows us what needs to go where. Okay, and it says the power switch goes at the top with the reset switch below it. So what we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to connect these particular things here which are called the front panel connectors. A lot of people get quite flustered with these, and it's pretty straightforward. As you'll see, on the power LED, you've got a positive and a minus. And again, on the reset switch, there's a positive and a minus. And again, on the HDD light, you've got a positive and a minus. So, on the motherboard themselves, just here, there's a little graph which shows you what needs to go where. Okay? If not, always consult your motherboard, because it will have very clear instructions of what needs to go where on there. Okay, so I always find it much easier to do the bottom ones first. Okay, so what do we need to put where? We need the HDD light, which is there, and we need the positive and negative. So we need to turn it upside down, and then we need to pop that on the bottom, which goes there. Fantastic. Right, the reset switch, which is there, we need a negative and a positive. So this is a positive, which is there, so we'll put that one on the bottom. Then we have our power switch, which is positive this side, Negative that side, okay, so they can go on them too. And then we have our power LED, which is positive this side and then negative on the other side. Okay, so we're going to hold these ones together. We should be able to put both on at the same time. There we go. Right. So, perfect. And what we can do then, guys, is we can shove all the excess back through and hopefully keep that nice and tidy. We've got our PCIe for our graphics card. And what I've done, guys, is I've just zip tied the additional connectors to the underside of the cable. So when the graphics card is installed, it looks somewhat a lot nicer, okay? So as you can see, guys, we've got now our 4-pin and our 8-pin, which is here, okay? And that will need to go into these two different connections up the top. This might have been a good job to have done before we put the fans in, you see. There we go. There's one. Right, last one. Ah, there we go. Blooming Nora. So there you go, guys. The 8-pin and the 4-pin are nicely in. We've got no issues now. That was a bit of a ball ache to get in there, but you just got to take your time and you'll get it in eventually, okay? Next thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the hard drive. So, hard drive requires SATA power, and it also requires data connection as well, okay? So we do that by, I think, should we use the right-handed one? Yeah, I think we'll use this one. Might be a little bit easier and a little bit smarter. There we go. Dead easy, dead quick way to install these hard drives is you pinch them together just like that, okay? And then on the sides, you've got two little catches which you can just pull out like this. And then your hard drive can sit in there. Let me just get this right. So it's going to go in like that. We need it like that. There we go. Right. So if we just then push down on this, that's it. Simple. Close these. Within 10 seconds, you've installed a hard drive. Okay, so what we need to do now, guys, is we need to move these out of the way so we don't get all confused. Right, so we'll cable manage it afterwards, but we need to put a SATA data connection here, which goes on just like that, okay? And then what we also require is this cable here, which will click onto here, just like that. And that's your hard drive done, okay? So we can go ahead and we can install that back into the caddy. And that's it for our hard drive. Obviously we need to cable manage it, okay? So what I'm going to do now, guys, is just spend 5 minutes tidying these cables up, making sure that they look presentable, and we've got them in a fashion where we know where everything is. And then what we'll do is we'll hook up the all-in-one cooler and we'll make sure all the fans are working. And last but not least, we'll install our graphics card. Right, there we go. We've got a little bit more of a orderly fashion on the back of here. So first things first, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that 1, 2 and 3 fans, i.e. the exhaust fans, are all connected. And we're going to use the splitter cable that comes with the Phanteks case, okay? So what you'll see is you've got 3 little connections here, okay? And what we need to do is we need to plug in 3 fans, okay? So the first one, which one's this one? There it is. So all we need to do is just line up the notches and connect them in, okay? So that's number 1. This is number 2. And this one is number 3. There we go. So that means, guys, now we've got 1, 2, 3 fans all working, okay? Now, what we have got is we've got RGB here for the pump. And then what we have got also is we've got RGB and power that's required for the fans at the front, okay? And we're going to take care of those right now. Just to let you know, I did obviously connect the hard drive there. In order to power these 3 fans, it's connected via SATA, which is just here, okay? So, last thing to do, guys, before we install the graphics card is the all-in-one cooler, okay? Now, it is bloody complicated, this is, for a 240 all-in-one to have this many bloody cables. So, please instruct your manual, because the loop system that it uses in order to make sure that everything is connected is bloody complicated. So I haven't installed one of these ones before either, so it's a bit of trial and error, but I'm guessing we'll get there fairly easily, okay? Wow, that was bloody complicated. So if you are thinking of getting this particular cooler, just bear in mind, guys, there's more connections on this 240 than there is on my 360 Caplex. It's ridiculously more difficult, okay? So, just to put it into perspective, what we've got here, okay, is basically we've got RGB for our pump, which has come out, which is here, okay? Then we've got RGB number 2 and RGB number 3, which is the 2 front fans, okay? They're then connected to an extension 12 volt addressable RGB cable, which needs to be going to our motherboard, okay? So that's those. Then I've got a connection from one fan to the other fan to then a 4-pin PWM connector, which can be connected to a fan header on your motherboard, either a pump head or CPU out or something like that. We've also then got a connection from our pump to our CPU header as well, okay? So, on the front of here, you will see we've got a 12 volt, where are we? There we go, 12 volt RGB header up here. We've also got the fans connected to our pump header, which is here. And then we've also got our CPU header, which is obviously connected straight to the CPU pump as well, okay? So, not the easiest to connect, in all honesty. Before we install the graphics card, we need to make sure that we have our slot open on our PCIe lane, okay? We also need to take out 2 of these panels at the back here. Now, the easiest way of making sure that we get that right is by lining up our graphics card like that, and we can see that we need number 2 and number 3 taking out. There we go. Right. Come on, you bugger. There we go. Number 2. And to number 3. Move them to one side for a second. Right, so manhandling the graphics card. So what we want to do, guys, is we want to line it up and then we want to firmly press in. And what will happen is the catch on the PCIe lane will hold this in position until we put 2 little clips or thumb screws to hold it in securely here. And what we're looking for is a firm push. There we go. That's graphics card installed, guys, okay? What I suggest you do is any brackets that you've taken off at the back, we can put those back on. So last thing, guys, is we just need to connect our PCIe cable to our graphics card. So if we push, there we go. Right, what we need to do now is just sort these cables out here, because I neatly did them before, but unfortunately the connection's the other way around. So I'll sort that one out now. We'll turn her around, we'll put the panels back on, and we'll hook her up to see whether everything works. So guys, that is our build complete. What we're going to do now is just put on the side panels and the front panel, and we're going to connect some power, and we're going to see if we hit BIOS or boot up screen. So, just so we're doing everything correctly, make sure that you've got your mesh filter on the top. which is magnetic. Let's proceed. We can put the front panel back on, and it's as simple as just lining it back up on the bottom and top and pressing forward. Our back panel can go back on. Hopefully this is where we see whether the cable management was any good or not. Not too shabby. Oh, we missed a bit. There we are. That's on. That is clean. That's really clean. Put this one back on. Fantastic. 4 screws. She's done. So let's have a bit of a peel. Right. Ah, stuck. Wow. So there she is, guys. I think she looks ultra clean, to be quite honest with you. I'm really happy with regards to how smart it actually looks. Let's get some power hooked up to it. Let's see whether we hit the BIOS screen, and let's also just do a little bit of configuring in there. We've got to upload Windows onto it as well and upload the latest drivers. So let's get that done now. Right. Moment of truth, guys. So I've just hooked up a mouse and a keyboard. I actually, well, the customer ordered these as well. Quite a clicky little keyboard. It's from Havit, so not an expensive one because, like I said, it's primarily going to be used for work and maybe a little bit of gaming if he gets into it. So quite a big chunky mouse. Nice sounding keyboard, very clicky, etc, etc. So let's bang some power into this. I've just installed my Windows 10 boot disk as well, or drive, USB drive. So what we'll do is we'll put some power into it. Have we got any lights? Oh. Press the power button. Oh, there she goes. We've got lights. Yeah, we've got lights. We're good. Right. Oh, there we go. Hey, Windows. There we go. Nice.